Yeah, exactly. So you
Yeah.
can see it.
But who doesn't like a chipmunk, you know?
Exactly. Well, a beaver in this case, and I guess they're similar, I think, in facial features. But
They are.
no, people love beavers. That's a compliment in my world. I'm a huge animal lover. I think people know I'm a vegetarian because of my love for animals. I see them mostly on par with humans. No reaction?
I do too.
Oh, you do?
I do. Yes. I uh, as you know how I felt about my dog. It's just it's like part of the family, and I think they're in ways more nobler than a lot of the human species are, if you ask me.
I agree. I think the range of I guess the way people act can delve from better to worse than animals, and
Hmm.
yeah. So I'm a huge advocate of animals, all of them, and of course, so sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
let's get into the news. Well, not the news. Let me tell you who my guest is first.
Oh yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm sorry. I should probably say I was hesitant on how much I should talk about it because I know it's so difficult. But I guess I should mention for the listeners that unfortunately Peanut has passed away. And what was sad is that I don't know if you noticed this. We talked about him on the last show the
That's right.
day I think before it happened or soon before it happened. So when the show aired, and I noticed it when I was putting together the show, we were talking about him, and it was just it was really sad. So it was unfortunate that we obviously you can we talk about him so much because he was so cool, but
Yeah,
just
he was in the car with me just hours. That was just hours before his heart, basically had heart failure, and I revived him once and couldn't revive him a second time.
yeah,
And but he was just in the car with me when we were talking on the show just a couple of hours before that happened.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
So
thank you, man.
sorry. Yeah, I didn't want. I know how difficult it is. I know for me it was
Yeah,
really difficult too when I lost my Chihuahua. That's the last dog I had was a precious little Chihuahua.
yeah. I got to tell you, it's been crushing, and
Yeah,
I've had some great support from a lot of people, including you, and I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. Well, we love
Thank you.
you, and we
Yeah,
love Pumpkin.
thanks.
And
Yeah.
all right, so difficult, but our guest. Our guest is for today. It's Dr. O'Connor. He runs the library. It's called the Jesse Marcel Library in Montana, and he's just a great guy. He comes to the conference. The Marcel Library is, of course, dedicated to Jesse Marcel. He was actually knew Jesse Marcel Jr. And I
Hmm.
didn't know to what extent until this interview, which we'll hear. But of course, Jesse Marcel, the senior, was the first Air Force officer on the scene to collect the material at the crash in Roswell. He was the guy who, along with others, said, "Hey, this is not of this world," and he maintained that for his entire life. However, he was part of the cover-up. He said, he was told to say this was a weather balloon, and he said, "Yes, sir, that's what I'm going to do."
Hmm.
And did that for many years until just not too long before he passed when he came out about what he felt it really was. So, R- Dr. Marcel Jr., who I knew very well, who is Marcel Sr.'s son, was just a wonderful, wonderful person.
Yeah.
One of my favorite people I have ever met. I mean, just an honest, great, down to earth guy. And Richard O'Connor, who we're interviewing today, was a friend of his, and he's also seems to be just really nice guy.
Yeah, it's I actually spoke with O'Connor, real nice guy, and he also said basically he didn't really have any interest in the UFO field until he met Jesse Marcel Jr. And he said the words coming from him, he trusted him 100% and respected him highly.
Hmm.
I think he's done a great job with that library and dedication to him.
Yeah. Yep. It's pretty cool stuff. And what's funny is that there's another big story I was thinking, because a good headline for this story would have been "Water Droplet Bursts UFO Bubble." Something like
Yeah,
that. Because
yeah,
this was a really cool picture that when I saw it, I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then I show it to Mark D'Antonio, and he says, water droplet. So, but Dr. O'Connor was the one who took
and
that
he was
picture.
right. Yeah,
And, yeah, and who, once he heard that, did some testing, and Dr. O'Connor said, oh, man, you're right. So we talk about that experience and how that all went as well.
yeah, yeah. That is a great story.
Hmm. So it'll be fun. It's really fun. So we've got that coming up in a minute. But before that, we have UFO news.
That's right.
And we let you start off.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So this is about an orb UFO that hovers at 500 feet near a Pennsylvania witness. This happened back on July 31st of this year, around 8:30. This couple of guys were out smoking, and they saw this. This was in Monroeville, which is in Pennsylvania, and they were smoking, like I said, and all of a sudden they saw this orb, and it started humming and changing colors. And that, at first made me think of a drone. I don't really know, because it said it stopped fast in midair and went after a couple of seconds, and then shot to the west and stopped, and then shut off the rest of the way. And they pictured it, and it's a perfectly round image. Now, I know cameras at a distance can distort things and the way they look and everything, and lights can distort things. But if you look at the pictures, you will see that it is a perfectly shaped round orange orb, like you hear about so often. And and it did make a humming noise, which is the only thing that makes me think it could have been some type of drone. And this is in Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. And it is a MUFON sighting reported, written here by Roger Marsh. What did you think of that, the images of that?
Yeah, I think the photos are interesting. I think that it's hard to say. The orbs, I think, are just the point of light which he is capturing out of focus. I think that's what the orb is. So I don't think it was really an orb. I think the first couple of photos where you see almost something more square-like or something being reflected,
Right.
Are probably more accurate as far as the shape, or at least the shape of whatever is reflecting off the object. But it's interesting. These are daylight photos, and this is something brightly reflective or self-luminous, during the day. Almost looking like it's more self-luminous. It could be reflective. So it's hard to say what it is. I mean, from the pictures, you just have something bright in the sky. It could be anything reflecting light. But from the movement this person describes, it sounds kind of interesting. It sounds like, I don't know what this could have been. Pretty weird.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone has really studied the images, like Mark D'Antonio or anyone like that. Do you happen to know?
I don't know. From what I understand, I think this one is still under investigation by MUFON. I don't think they've made a determination, or because there's no comments from an investigator, and often Roger will put those comments in if there are some. But yeah, so I think this one's still under investigation. So it'll be interesting to hear some follow-up. Hopefully we can get some follow-up on this one.
Well, actually, it does mention Director Sam Colesmo Jr.
Oh, it does.
as
oh, yeah,
the
here we go.
investigator. Yeah,
So he must have
And
stated it was an unknown. Yeah, he did.
yeah. And that's there's a little misconception about that. I've had a conversation with someone from MUFON about that, and I'm sure you know that just because it's as an unknown doesn't mean that case closed and it won't be investigated anymore, and then or another determination cannot be made. It's still in a way open.
Yeah, I think Robert Powell always says that, who runs the scientific review board there, and because they'll look at the cases to find the best cases. And yeah, he always says that the cases are never closed. They're just could be pending more information. So you're right. So yeah, at least this investigator felt like it was an unknown, but looking at this analysis, I don't see that they did like a really careful examination of the photos, although we don't have access to the full report, so we can't know that for sure. But the investigator felt it was an unknown because he said it was moving and then stopped and hovered. Which he's right, that is kind of a strange behavior for a craft. And this does seem to be further away than, although he said 500 feet. So
yeah,
a drone could do that.
We'll call it unknown from this end.
Yeah, we don't know yet. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So there was another one, some videos, and these videos also from Pennsylvania, and this was July 31st at 9 p.m. So this is at night that these people were looking at a low-flying plane, and then they noticed that there were some sort of objects below. From the video, you can't tell much. You just see these lights that could be. It's really hard to tell from the video, and this one's under investigation. I mean, it could be lights, it could be stars. It's hard to tell, but at least this person thought it was something strange, and you can hear him kind of freaking out in the video. It's kind of funny to listen to the person in the video.
Now, where did you say this one took place?
This is in Bristol, Pennsylvania.
Oh, also. Yeah, right.
So also in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I know, you talked to like Stan Gordon or someone like that, and it's a very active state.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe UFOs favor it somehow, and Bigfoot and all that. Yeah.
They dig it for whatever reason out there.
Yeah.
I used to do some work out there. It's okay. I guess there's some thick forest and everything out there.
Yeah, there's some good Amish pies, too.
Mm.
Yeah, that's maybe what they're attracted to.
So I guess the last one I want to talk about really isn't news, but are you familiar with his Canary Islands UFO sighting from 1976?
1973? Was it 1976?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. That's the one that was filmed by was it Navy or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was the Air Force, but it was seen by lots of military. But yeah, this one's really weird. It's this really bright light that you could see. It's this famous kind of UFO history type of historical photograph. And we posted a story on it. This was written by Jason McClellan, and this because it comes from the magazine. So I'm starting to post stories from our magazines, especially the ones that are out of print, and on topics that we don't have online. And we don't have a story about this Canary Island sighting online, so I took that from the last issue of the magazine, which sold out, so we don't have any. Probably no plans to print anymore. So, but this story, it's a great story done by Jason, and he referenced largely the Rockefeller document. This report that Lawrence Rockefeller commissioned to write about the best cases, and this is one of them. But yeah, a lot of the military in the Canary Islands saw this object. There was a picture taken. And then there was also kind of a side story where nearby a doctor was taking a taxi to a patient's home, and he said he saw this sphere, but that inside of the sphere he could see like people in it moving around and walking around or something, and he drew a sketch. And supposedly, once he got to the patient's home, he had them come outside and they saw it also. So
wow,
yeah,
I never heard that part of it. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting case. The photograph is pretty amazing. There's just huge, light over the horizon. So it's a pretty incredible picture. And you guys could check that out. Very credible, at least as far as who took the picture. Another interesting thing is that James Oberg, who is a well-known space journalist who writes for NBC and everything, we're fortunate enough and quite frankly honored enough to have him review our site quite a bit. And although he often debunks because he's a skeptic, but he has usually some really good information, but he feels that he's figured out what it was. Although he admits that he thinks it was a rocket launch, but he can't find a corresponding rocket launch, and he feels that the government isn't sharing all the information on all the rocket launches, and he admits it's kind of strange that it would be secret, these rocket launches, if this is what it is. So I don't know, you might be able to anyways, that's his argument, and people can go and look at this on our page and see James Oberg's comments and how he feels that what he feels this actually is. But yeah, really interesting pictures, really interesting case people can read about at openminds.tv.
Now, can they actually have such a thing as a secret rocket launch?
Oh, there's plenty of them.
Oh, I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just thought it would be public knowledge no matter what.
I mean, they can't be observed, but there are off the book, especially defense does it with satellites and things like this. I mean, usually they know they're launched, but they don't publicize it or anything. And if asked, they may admit there was a rocket launch and there's just undisclosed payloads. But I don't think you can find a regular schedule of those things. The strictly defense launches. A lot of them they'll add equipment onto launches of commercial satellites and stuff, from what I understand. But yeah, go look it up. They definitely do.
How about that?
Missile testing and stuff like that. I mean, there are some of the UFO sightings off of the coast of California, at least one, where nobody's admitted to who it was, but it was clearly a rocket of some sort. And it had to be Navy, most likely a Navy test, but they have not admitted to it. And so it happens.
Yeah, I probably should know that, and I've probably heard that before, because now I'm remembering, I think that one of the UFO sightings overseas that looks really incredible ended up being a failed rocket launch. That was never reported prior to. Of course, that's not America, but I think it was Switzerland or something like that.
Yeah. It happens more out there in other countries, especially in Asia, because they deny everything they do out there, but it happens here too, which is surprising.
Yeah.
So,
about that.
But no problem for not remembering. We're getting old, man.
I know. Yeah. One
Memory
day at a time.
Fades.
Yeah. And I'm turning into a woodchuck or something. So,
a beaver.
Beaver, yeah.
You're a busy beaver. You're a busy guy, right?
I am.
You're out getting it done.
That's right, man.
Providing for your woman.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm sure she appreciates it. Does she?
No comment here. Yeah.
I know she likes to give you a hard time.
Yeah.
That's why you're used to it when I do it, because she does that to you all the time.
That's right.
She loves it. It's just funny.
Yeah, keep the beaver down. That's right.
All right. Well, you're out of time, and we're done with news pretty much anyway, so thank you so much for joining us for the news again.
All right. Thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
You bet. All right. Take care.
I am excited to welcome to the show Dr. Richard O'Connor. Hello.
Hi, Alejandro. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Doing really well. It's a beautiful day here, and everything's going quite well.
And you're in Montana?
I'm in Helena, just outside of Helena, Montana.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is probably the perfect weather time this time of year out there, huh?
Yeah, pretty much, except for, usually in August we get a lot of forest fires up here, and certainly this year is no different with the big fire over near Hamilton and the Bitterroot. So, we always have that to contend with in the summer.
Yeah. I guess to begin with, before we get really into the UFOs and everything, maybe you could give us a little bit about your professional background.
Sure. I came to Helena in 1988 and took a position here with St. Peter's Hospital as a board-certified anesthesiologist. And, I had just finished my fellowship at UC Davis in California and finished my residency at the University of Miami in anesthesiology. And so kind of right out of my training, I decided to take a job here in Helena. I'd always kind of wanted to live in the Rocky Mountains and enjoy living in the mountains with all of the hiking and, beautiful scenery and things like that. So I have enjoyed living in Helena and working here, and St. Peter's was a great place to work. And of course, in anesthesia, you work closely with surgeons, and I met a number of surgeons here over the years. I worked at St. Peter's for about 28 years. And one of the surgeons that I met early on in my career, in fact, probably the day or two after I arrived here, was Dr. Jesse A. Marcel Jr., who was an ENT surgeon here in Helena. And I think he had been here for probably 15 years in practice before I ever arrived here. Mm-hmm. And so I met Dr. Marcel and worked with him, over many years, and got to be, good friends with him, and I knew him well. And also his wife, Linda, and his kids, and kids I knew, less well, but of course I met all of them. Mm-hmm. And so, after getting to know Dr. Marcel, it had been, I don't know, a while, probably a year after I met him, before I ever really put two and two together and realized that he was the individual whose father brought home this material from the Roswell UFO crash site, and spilled it out on the kitchen floor and showed it to Dr. Marcel and to his mother, and explained that he was quite certain that this was not from planet Earth. And so when I put that together, and I don't recall exactly how that happened, but I think I had heard his name mentioned on a documentary that I saw on television or something. And so I approached him. I said, are you the individual that this documentary was referring to, who handled this material from Roswell? And he said, yes, that was me. And so, of course, he told me the whole story, really no different than what he's told, millions of other people, either personally or through videos that have been shown repeatedly on different series on television, or, you can see interviews with Dr. Marcel on YouTube. They're all quite accessible. And so what he told me was basically what he's told everyone, that this happened. He held this stuff in his hands. He inspected it very closely. And he became convinced, I think probably at that time it had more to do with his father's opinion about what they saw and what they held in their hands, but he became convinced that this material was not from this planet. And having known Dr. Marcel, as I did for many, many years, 20, 25 plus years, and having had many conversations with him about this and, other topics that would be related to UFOs, I'm quite certain that it did happen, just as he said it did. I just am 100% certain that he would never have tried to mislead, the public or his family or me or anybody that he worked with there at the hospital who he talked to about this. He would have never done that. He was not that kind of a man. And so what he says that happened, I'm quite certain that it did happen.
Mm-hmm. So was his father alive when you all met?
No. No, he may have been, but I never met his father. I'm not exactly sure when his father passed away, but I don't think that he was alive. I did meet his mother. Mm-hmm. She actually came to the hospital operating room one evening when I was on call, and she'd fractured her hip and needed to have her hip repaired. But unfortunately, when I met her, she was in her 80s, and she was, she had dementia for several years. And so she was, I wasn't able to talk to her about what happened in Roswell because she was, by the time I met her in that stage of her life, she was too, she had pretty advanced dementia at that time and just wasn't able to recall things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew Jesse pretty well too, as the listeners know. I hosted his website, so I put up his website when he released his book, and luckily I got to spend a lot of time with him. But so I know what you mean when you say, about the honesty and integrity that he had. And for me, there are those people that are just honest. They're honest people who, when they tell you something, it's the truth. And I don't think you necessarily run into too many people like that in your life. I mean, they're there, but it is a special characteristic that he certainly had.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah, truth was paramount to him, and it was one of the reasons I think that his story was always the same. It was never, more embellished with any other, fine points or details. It was just pretty much told the same story, exactly what he recalled from that night, and didn't really try to inflate it with any other nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
And that went on from 1978, I think, or shortly after, I think, was right around the time that his father started talking publicly about this. And so, for more than 30 years, Dr. Marcel was trying to awaken people to the fact that this did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, quite a momentous event in the history of mankind. So definitely something that it's, the term Roswell and the Roswell UFO crash, it's almost become mundane to some people, but it isn't. It's really an important turning point in mankind's history.
Mm-hmm. Before you had met Jesse Jr., I guess I should say, did you have any knowledge or interest in the UFO topic?
Not really. I would say very little to none. I don't even know that I had even read any books about it before I met Dr. Marcel. So certainly that was a turning point in my life as far as this subject is concerned. There was sort of a incident that occurred when I was young as a child, and I think I was in 6th grade, living in Clovis, New Mexico, and I had this recollection of this one night where my bedroom, in which I had my own bedroom, and I was asleep or falling asleep, and I just recall my bedroom turning bright red, and I for some reason I associated that night with seeing a UFO, and don't recall anything specific about the UFO. Really, no other. It was just an association in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe 5 years ago. I'm 61 years old now, so maybe 5 years ago, I asked my mom. I was just sort of thinking about that event, and I asked my mother if she recalled me ever being interested in UFOs or talking about UFOs as a kid or whatever. And she said, well, just that time that you came out to breakfast that one morning and asked us if we saw the UFO last night. And she just came out with that spontaneously. Like, she remembered it, and this would have been, 50 years ago. So I don't know what that all means, and I really haven't delved into it, and probably won't, because it's really doesn't seem to be of any consequence in my life. But did something happen then? Possibly. I I just don't know, but maybe that's part of an explanation of why I've become so interested in the subject. But certainly 90% of it has to do with my, my acquaintance with Dr. Marcel and my confidence that his word is as good as gold. I have no reason to think otherwise.
Mm-hmm. And another interesting characteristic, and a little bit surprising to me just because of the way everything was portrayed, or often is, he really didn't seem to have any anger or frustration towards the military or the government in relation to what took place.
Yeah, none whatsoever. He's, in fact, if he and I had any differences, it would be, I think, in our view of the military. And it's not that I'm anti-military. I'm not. But he was very, very supportive of the military. And as you know, he was in the Air National Guard for years and flew helicopters for the Air National Guard and served in Iraq when he was, pretty late in age. I think he went over there when he was like 67 and was there for, I want to say 18 months. It was a pretty good long while, for a guy that was in his late 60s when he went over there.
Right.
But he was a, very patriotic, very all-American kind of an individual, and certainly did support the military in every way possible. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, he didn't really have any anger or resentment, I think, towards the military for them having kind of set up his father to begin this cover-up that's been going on now for such a long time. But I think he agreed with the strategy, I believe, the apparent strategy, I should say, that this information, although it was originally covered up, would be slowly sort of dripped out to the public over decades, and with the end goal of having done this in a way that people will find palatable and at a rate at which they can sort of, our society, I should say, can kind of incorporate all of this into the worldview of the majority of our citizens. And I think that's what's been happening, and it seems to be accelerating now. So,
so you feel there is a purposeful leaking of information about UFOs?
Yes, I would say that if there's not a purposeful leaking, at least any efforts to retard the evolution of the increasing awareness and information that keeps coming out from UFO researchers just seems to be no longer existent. I just don't feel that there's any evidence nowadays of any sort of censorship about this going on, or any active efforts to suppress new information that's coming out. So, I mean, even in that, I think we could say that could be part of a little d disclosure plan. And but then we see new things coming up on, for example, the FBI's website, where they have certain documents that have been put up there that are indicative that UFOs are real, and that this is something that the FBI has taken seriously and investigated quite a lot. We see the same sort of things coming up recently on the CIA's website with a new section there that has to do with, if you see a UFO, the sort of information that you should try to remember to take down and that kind of thing. So these sorts of, they're subtle changes, but they're real, and I think they mean something important, and that is that I think our government is no longer trying to suppress this information and no longer making, the great efforts that used to be made to discourage people or dissuade them from looking at this.
I would agree with you. I think some people would not, but I actually, for those reasons you just cited, would agree with you that at least some sectors seem to be opening up to, at least like you say, being less restrictive or just completely dissuading people from the topic. And if listeners doubt and they're like, what's he talking about? You can go to openminds.tv and look up FBI or CIA and you'll find just what you had said, that, yeah, they've been posting UFO stuff, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is interesting, and I think it means something.
Mm-hmm. So at some point, you then began to get more into this topic, and I would assume it was due to your relationship with Dr. Marcel.
Well, yeah, in part it's due to my relationship with Dr. Marcel. I recognized before he died in August of 2013 that he was, looking older, moving slower. He had this problem with a neuropathy in his legs when he came back from Iraq. He was starting to have a little bit of difficulty walking, and, it was just becoming obvious that he wasn't going to be around for a long, long time. And so I approached him and I said, it seems to me that there should be some sort of a means of trying to carry on your story into the future, and a center for helping, a repository for information for people who become interested in this and want to learn more about it. To have a library, and I would name it, after you and your father, coincidentally, and they had the exact same name, first, middle, and last. And so, he said, well, if you want to do that, that would be great. He said, I'm sure my father would be honored, so that's kind of the humble guy that he was. He wasn't going to take any credit for this, but he said, yeah, if you want to do that, go ahead. So I did. And, I happen to have a nice building, near my place here that, is well suited for that sort of a purpose. And so, I bought some bookshelves and put up some signs, and, it's open to the public on Tuesday evenings from 7 to 10 p.m. And I try to be there every Tuesday evening and have something kind of interesting to present, that I think is good information to help people learn more about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's kind of what drove me to do that. I think the other thing is though that I just realized that this subject is so important for our society to eventually come to terms with. And I think the sooner that happens, the better, in many ways, and I think that, the overall, good that can come of it, I think is definitely going to outweigh any sort of, complications that it introduces, initially when most of the population finally goes, wow, okay, this is real.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it may have a lot of benefits, to our world, actually. And, so I would say that, knowing Dr. Marcel sort of inspired it, yes, but I think that there were many other probably more important reasons of why I decided to go ahead and open a library that was dedicated to UFOs. Crop circles is another topic of interest that we have some information and books about. And of course, the abduction phenomenon is another aspect of this that I think people are curious about and want to know more about. And so we have information on the abduction phenomenon as well. Lots of DVDs and videos that people can look at and check out,
Mm-hmm.
And I've had really good luck with people returning books and videos and things that they borrow. I've only had to make a couple of phone calls in probably 4 years, you know.
Wow.
So, you know, I think most people out there are responsible, and if you make this material available to them, they enjoy it and they learn from it. And they've been very good about returning any materials that they borrow from the library. So that's been great.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is Jesse A. Marcel Library and also the Crop Circle Research Foundation. Why did you decide to also or when did you decide as well to add the crop circle phenomenon?
Well, actually, that came before the library.
Oh, wow.
I became interested in crop circles probably quite a bit earlier than I did UFOs. You know, I found them very intriguing. And I would say, you know, maybe around 2002 when the Crabwood formation came down near Winchester, England, which was the one people might know as the alien face crop circle. When I saw that, I just was astounded. You know, I was just like, there's no way that people did this. It's just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Paul Vigay, the computer programmer, you know, understood that there was actually a binary code message encoded in this disk that this apparent gray alien is holding, that was also something that I just was like, wow, this is just amazing. And then when you know, as time went by, and here we are now in 2016, the technique that was used in that 2002 Crabwood crop circle to encode or to present the image that was present in the crop field on this huge pallet, I think it was something like 290 feet long 290 feet wide, and I think it was like 360 feet long, something like that. It was just quite a large crop circle. The technique that was used are these lines going across horizontally that vary in width and create an image. Sort of reminds you of what they do in the Wall Street Journal with this pointillism, you know, for creating images. And I've not seen that technique used again in 14 years. I have never seen that come down in a crop circle again. So to me, that speaks also for this being one of the crop circles that I would regard as a genuine or a non-human made crop circle. I don't know that there have been very many of them, but really all we need is one to jar us into realizing that we're not alone here and that our world is being contacted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you believe there is the crop circles are related to perhaps some sort of extraterrestrial message?
Yes, I do, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least some of them.
Yeah, you know, I can't tell you how many crop circles are not made by people versus how many are made by people. I suspect that nowadays probably the vast majority of them are made by people, but that doesn't lessen the importance of the phenomenon because, like I said, all we need is one of them that's not made by people. And there have been several that I think are candidates for, you know, if people made them, I would be absolutely floored that people would be able to do this. And so, you know, if there's just one of them that is not made by people, then that's huge. And it's something that really I think that our world should pay attention to and start making headway into what does this mean? You know, what are we being told here? What did that message mean? Who are they referring to? Yeah, all of those things I think are of immense importance, and they just haven't gotten the traction that has been required for the world to really embrace this and start to go after it. But I think one day here in the near future that is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So what year did you open up the library?
I opened the library in March of 2012.
Okay, so now it's been about 3 years or so?
4 years.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how has the response been?
It's been, I would say, not as many people visit there as I would have hoped for, but I'm never alone down there on a Tuesday evening. You know, there's always a group of probably maybe 10 core people that show up most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And but generally there's always one or two or three new people that come every Tuesday. And I think that's wonderful, because those are people that are curious about it, you know, and want to learn more about it, and they seek out the library. And so it's been gratifying in that respect, you know, that probably over the 4 years, there's, I would guess, you know, well over 300 people on our email list. And so I feel like it's been somewhat effective in reaching out and helping to give people a place where they can come and talk about this subject without, you know, feeling like they're going to be ridiculed or made fun of. And it gives people a place where they can find information, ask questions, talk about their UFO sightings. And we've got a channel on YouTube where, you know, I've been able to video record several people from our local area that have seen UFOs pretty up close and personal. And so we've video recorded their stories. Just recently, last week, myself and Joan Bird, who's the author of a book called Montana UFOs and Extraterrestrials, very good book.
Mm-hmm.
Joan and I went to Great Falls and interviewed two Montana sheriffs, one who was from Shoto, Montana, and the other from Great Falls, Montana. And they were sheriffs in Teton and Cascade counties back in the mid 70s through the early 90s. And they were willing to talk to us about their experiences with investigations of UFO sightings and cattle mutilations. And they had quite a number of stories to relate to us. And we've got that video now up on YouTube. And if people want to find it, the title of it is "Are UFOs Real?" ? Listen to these two Montana sheriffs. So if they put that in the search bar of YouTube, they'll be able to find that. It's a little bit long, you know, it's a little over an hour long, but it's certainly, I think, good information coming from two men who I know are absolutely honest, upstanding, straight up guys, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's a good interview. I would recommend for people to go to YouTube and watch that. Are UFOs real? Listen to these two Montana sheriffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Joan's book. I did a review on it, and I think it was great. A great book. She's really neat. So, luckily, I run into her occasionally. I saw you both were at the last UFO Congress.
Yeah. I've been to, I think 3 UFO congresses, and I find them to be, you know, just an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things I hear there, I don't think are too credible, but some of them that I hear are just amazing, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the way it goes there. But I think it's just wonderful that you have something that commemorates the Marcels, because Jesse was just such an important and amazing person to me. He was just a good person. So it's fun to see that. And it seems that, at least from my perspective, looking at the UFO headlines out there, you have got some pretty decent media attention.
Yeah, I have, and some of it's been
less than flattering.
No, it's been good, but Like, for example, I do have two cameras up near the library, and I have them focused on the sky, and the purpose of them is that, it's just sort of a inexpensive research project to see if it might be possible to photograph UFOs in the sky, that just might happen to go by. Their motion triggered cameras. So, I mean, it's a real shot in the dark, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to make it less so, and this has been part of the experimental protocol, if you will, is on the Crop Circles Research Foundation's website. I've used that as a tool, potential tool, to communicate with extraterrestrials that might be around in the area and might have the capability or the interest in searching for, radio wave signals coming from Earth, which our internet certainly does go out into space because it's transmitted through satellites. And so I thought, well, why not, what do you got to lose? Just send them a message, tell them the latitude and the longitude of where these cameras are located, and ask them if they would come by and allow a photograph of their craft to be obtained by these two cameras. And so one day I went out there and I had this photograph that I came across that was on one of the cards, and I was like, wow, this looks like a UFO. And so I don't know if I called the newspaper. I think I did call the newspaper and say, hey, I've got a picture of a UFO. And now I regret doing that because later on I was able to prove to myself that it wasn't a UFO. It was actually a raindrop that was in just the right configuration and just the right, I don't know, it just looks so much like a UFO, but I've convinced myself since then that it was a raindrop. So bottom line is my experiment with my cameras has so far not been successful.
Yeah. Well, that happens. I mean, it happens to the best of us, and hopefully one day something will come along. But yeah, in your defense, I remember that incident. I thought your picture was amazing as well. I thought, wow, this is something. And it just so happened that when I got a copy of the picture, Mark D'Antonio was speaking at the local MUFON here, who does a photo analysis. And, he's got a trained eye. So he looked at it, and I was like, wow, this is going to get him. He's going to love this. And he very quickly, well, I think it's a raindrop. And wow. I was like, what are you talking about? And then he told me, well, you'll notice that the sun's coming, I'm not sure if it was right or left, but the sun's coming from the right, but the reflection's on the left, which is indicative of the refraction in a raindrop. And I was like, oh, man, you're right. So I also, and colleagues, thought that photo was really something special. So you never know. I would have had a similar reaction as you would have. But like I tell people, it's worth it to get it out into the public so that others can see it, so that maybe someone can discover what it is. Because often, or most likely, that's going to be what happens, but there's a chance that no one would have figured out what it was, and then that would have been important. So I think it's important to put yourself out there like that, even though some people can be so critical and mean about these things at times. Hopefully that didn't happen to you.
Oh, it did happen to me. I hadn't put that out, to the public more than 24 hours until this quote video analyst, expert or photo analyst, came forward and said that it was a fake. And I was like, well, I don't know what it is, but I definitely know that it's not fake. I mean, this came right off the camera card. And so, that made me wonder if that has been part of the means by which this whole subject has been sort of suppressed, is by having people out there who just from the get-go, right out of the gate, will start bringing into question the integrity of the person that did that's submitting the information. Because that's what happened. And I went back and forth for days and spent a lot of time defending myself through emails to this individual who just persisted in insisting that I had faked all of this photograph. And but this quote expert photo analyst never said, "Oh, I think it's a raindrop." He just said, "I think it's fake." Well, I was able to prove it was a raindrop when the snow finally melted off of our roof and it was safe for me to go up there. I went up there with a turkey baster full of water and I dripped water drops down in front of the camera, and the photos that resulted looked very, very much like the original photo. So that's what convinced me. But I probably wouldn't have gone up there had it not been for some people like Mark D'Antonio saying, "Oh, I think it's a water drop," you know? So you're right. You do have to make yourself kind of vulnerable and put yourself out there and say, what does everybody think of this? And I think that's how UFO research is going to move forward, you know?
That is what's great about, and unfortunate, because I saw that too, people claiming, and they often do this, that it's a hoax, and these self-proclaimed, analysts, and it's difficult because obviously, I mean, if your picture would have turned out to be something that was in the sky, this person would have immediately gotten that wrong. And they were wrong and were proved wrong. So it's just unfortunate that, and I think it prevents a lot of people from, coming out or even getting involved, is that you've got to face a lot of scrutiny these days online, and you've got to face a lot of people just being downright mean, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you have to have a pretty thick skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's just so unfortunate that people are like that. However, as for your library, do you ever have skeptics come?
Not really. Mm-hmm. Everybody that comes seems to be just interested in learning more about this. I mean, the world is waking up. People are realizing that there's more to this than they thought. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it's due to efforts like yours there at Open Minds, the UFO Congress, the work that Stephen Greer's doing, the work that Stephen Bassett's doing. There's just a lot of individuals, very high quality, credible people now who are embracing this and working to help our world become more enlightened about this, Mm-hmm. So it's happening. And so, no, I haven't really had any people that were negative or skeptical come to the library.
Mm-hmm. So, and it helps me with motivation as well, because sometimes, you just trudge along and you do this stuff, and you wonder, does it matter? Does it make a difference? And I mean, you said earlier you think it is very important that people come to terms with this topic and know more. And why do you think that?
I think that when our society's attention becomes focused on who these beings are, where they're coming from, what their purpose here is, what we might learn from them, and the things that we do learn from them being implemented into our future, I just think it's going to help mankind sort of move away from these sort of primitive practices that we're trying to evolve away from, like war, like nuclear weapons, maybe even a new system in our society for exchanging goods and services that is, a little bit more compassionate than what we have today. There's just no telling what we may learn when we finally get down to the serious business of trying to make contact with these beings who are evidently, I mean, I would say obviously interested in our civilization and in this planet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They've been around for a long, long time. So I think that it will just be, it'll open up a new world to people and to our society. And so I think that it's definitely worth doing, and the work that you're doing there at Open Minds and is extremely important, you know, because this unless people are engaging with this and talking about it and learning more about it, then we're going to stay stuck in a world that, you know, quite frankly, has a lot of room for improvement, in my opinion, as far as our social development is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we live on a beautiful planet, and we should be the stewards of the planet. I think we are sort of by de facto the stewards of this planet, but we're doing an extremely poor job of it, and a lot of it is based upon concerns about, you know, capitalism and this sort of thing. So the other thing that I think is huge is these reports now that are coming out from Robert Hastings and the Air Force officers that he's interviewed about UFOs interacting with our nuclear weapon systems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and my opinion is we need those things off the planet as soon as possible. I mean, no nuclear weapons. It's such a risk to not only to our civilization, but probably more importantly is it's a risk to the biosphere of this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another positive effect that I think could come about from people engaging with the UFO subject, is to start asking these really important questions about why have they done this? You know, what's the message here? And we, you know, if we could get into contact with them, just lay the guns down and start having honest efforts to make contact with them, to sit down and have in whatever way we could devise to do it, you know, have a quote conversation unquote with whoever they are and however that might be done. But we won't answer any of those questions unless the public gets serious about this and starts to really pay close attention to this. Mm-hmm. and accepts it into their worldview. But what could be more important than getting our nuclear weapons off this planet so that they no longer remain a threat to our civilization and to the biosphere of this planet?
Mm-hmm.
I can't even think of hardly anything that's more important than doing that.
Right. Yeah. It's a scary situation that they exist at all.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was this stop, drop, and roll and everything, or that you know, hiding under your desk and everything during the Cold War. However, I mean, we're not much more safe from that problem today, and I think it's just less predominant that people think about it. But you're right. I agree with you. It's a topic that I think about often, especially because, like you, I also appreciate Hastings' work. But I also wanted to ask, you mentioned SETI and METI, and one of the evolutions in this, the perception of extraterrestrials and aliens and all of that, is that the SETI project used to be seen as pretty fringe, and it's not anymore. It's mainstream, and you see so many stories coming out about it. Do you feel that it almost feels like the discovery of at least a microbe or some sort of extraterrestrial life we're on the cusp of it now? Do you think if we were to discover something like that, that would help move people along in the direction that you're speaking of?
Oh, absolutely. I do. You know, I think it's just like all of these exoplanets that are being discovered. You know, we're now up to close to 3,000, I think, planets that have been discovered. So each one of these new bits of information that people are exposed to is going to crack open their minds a little bit wider and a little bit wider to the realization that we're not alone in the universe. And I think almost everybody is getting there, you know, in their worldview at this point. But we still have a long way to go in getting people to accept that, yes, there's other life in the universe, and yes, some of that life is coming here, and they're watching, and they're observing what's going on down here. Mm-hmm. Getting people to that sort of understanding is still going to require a lot of work, and so don't leave what you're doing. It's necessary.
Well, you know what? This was a great way to end the week because it's a great positive note because, especially in this world where I'm a bit of a news hound and there's so much negativity, I can kind of see this how a more global, wider perspective, if humanity had it, could help. And then how this work, along with the work of science, is kind of helping people with that. So I feel much better. Thank you very much.
Good. Well, glad I could help. That's what doctors are for.
Exactly. So I also feel very positive about your work. It's wonderful that you have this library named the Jesse A. Marcel Library in Helena, Montana. And where can people go to find out more?
So the library has a website. It's jaml.org.
Okay.
And Crop Circles Research Foundation also has a website. So if they just Google Crop Circles Research Foundation, they'll find that website as well.
Okay, and jaml.org.
Correct.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It was wonderful talking to you, and like I said, now I have a great aspect on life going into the weekend, so that's just going to make for a wonderful weekend.
Great. Well, I hope it is for you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you so much to Dr. O'Connor. It was a lot of fun to talk to him, and it's always fun to reminisce about the great man, Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., and to, of course, talk about Roswell. And it's fun to talk to people like this who have kind of some firsthand experiences with the witness and, can confirm just what a great guy Jesse Marcel was and an honest person. So it was a lot of fun to talk to Dr. O'Connor and, also get kind of that positive information or perspective on the future of this field. And we'll see what happens. Remember, you can see information about the library at jaml.org. That's jaml.org. And you can Google, as he says, the Crop Circle Research Center for information on his work there, which is also some interesting stuff. So be sure to check that out, especially if you live in Montana or you're going to be in the area. Go stop by the library, jaml.org. Otherwise, thank you so much to Martin Willis of Podcast UFO for once again joining us for the news. And, again, my condolences for Peanut. He was just the cutest little Chihuahua guy, and I know he meant a lot to Martin and his wife. And so it's really sad, and I'm sad that I won't be able to see him at the next UFO Congress. So, but we should be able to see Martin. I know Martin's planning on coming, so be sure to go to ufocongress.com to look up information. We've got many of the speakers listed. We have more speakers coming that will be listed. We have some really exciting stuff we're working on. Of course, the most exciting stuff takes longer to put together, so the most exciting stuff will come later, although I'm pretty damn excited about what we got already. I think we've got a great group of speakers. I'm so excited to have some of the people we haven't had before, and I'm really excited to see new stuff from people we have had at the conference before. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of really good stuff in store there. Go to ufocongress.com and get your tickets now because they're the cheapest now. In a couple months, the prices will go up, but right now it's the early bird special. And as I tell you guys, if you're planning on coming, be sure to go book the hotel. In fact, do that right now because the hotel sells out very quickly. And in fact, even though it's really early, I would not be surprised if we hear at any moment now that the the host hotel is sold out. Of course, there's a number of great hotels nearby, and they will shuttle you to the conference. But it's always fun to stay where the conference is, so you could just kind of crash. Some people party quite a bit, and they like to be able to go crash in their room, so there's no danger of them having to crash out in the desert, and waking up in the morning out and they're surrounded by cacti, with their face in the dirt and scorpions in their hair. Actually, the scorpions are very nice out here. They're timid. They actually don't bite people often. They're cute as heck, but don't make them mad because it hurts from what I hear when you get stung by those little suckers. They're tiny too. They're just little guys. But anyway, I got off topic a little bit there with the scorpions. Nobody at our conference has been bitten by scorpions, by the way. I don't know that anybody's even seen one at the conference, nor any other dangerous desert animal or creature. So no worries there. Also, for the past conferences, let's say for some odd reason you've never been to the UFO Congress. I don't know why you wouldn't come, but maybe you've got something going that time. Maybe you're in another country and it's really difficult to get there. Well, luckily for you, we have the Open Minds UFO video portal, and for just a couple dollars, just a few dollars a month, you have access to the majority of the speakers from the past years. Now, we don't have them all up. We have all the speakers from last year. We have a lot of the speakers from previous years, but we're still working on getting them up. So the beauty is we've got dozens and dozens of lectures posted at our UFO video portal. You can go subscribe and have access to all of them and begin watching them. But by the time you binge watch all of them, we're going to have all of them up. So we're posting more all the time. So the UFO video portal is awesome. A lot of you are asking, how can we help Open Minds? And make sure you stick around. And as you know, this radio show is free. Going to our website, that news is free. Most everything we do open and free to the public. However, if you want to help us out, that would be wonderful if you could go subscribe to our video portal that you can find at openminds.tv. And that way, it helps bring some income to make sure that this keeps going. Because really, right now, it's a drain on the pocketbook for our sponsor. And just thank you so much to John Rayo, who's the guy who keeps Open Minds open. He provides us space, and it's his brainchild and everything. And we wouldn't be able to do this without him, and it would greatly help if you guys could help us out also. So go to openminds.tv and look for the video portal. Otherwise, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. If you watch our YouTube channel, you may be used to the UFO report coming out on a weekly basis. We've changed stuff up. So now we have a photo archive, so UFO photos that we take out of our archives, and we make a video around those. We do those periodically. We also do the UFO report, more sporadically, and then we also have other videos that we're putting out. So, for instance, we have what I think is just a great interview with sci-fi legend Doug Trumbull. So Doug Trumbull's been on this show, but I got to sit down with him and ask him some questions about, Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg and this sort of thing I haven't asked before. We've videotaped that. Michael put together this amazing video where it's almost like a little documentary, and that's up on YouTube for free. So please check that out. I think it's really cool. I think it's one of my favorite interviews ever, if not my favorite interview ever, just because he's a special effects, guru for my favorite movies, and he worked with the directors of my favorite movies, some of my favorite directors, and I got to talk to him about them. So this interview is great, so check that out. And then we're going to have something new coming up called Open Minds Magazine. This is a news magazine on YouTube, so it's video where we're really going to be going in depth. We've got interviews with some of the most important people that relate to these topics, and I think you're going to love these videos. The first one is going to be kind of starting from the beginning, Blue Book, and in particular the most impressive sightings. And one sighting that we're going to delve into is the 1952 Washington, D.C. sightings. And I think we're going to give you more detail and information than you've gotten anywhere else. So this is going to be hopefully really new and eye-opening, and we're going to move from there and I think bring some perspective and investigation and insight into how the government and how the public and how we all deal with this topic, more so than you'll get anywhere else. I mean, that's what we tried to do, and I think we accomplished with the magazine. It's something we try to do with this show, and I'm really excited about it. I mean, we've already shot the first episode. It's being edited together, and I think you guys are going to love that, and that's going to be out in a couple of weeks too. So lots of really exciting things that we're doing here at OpenMinds.tv. I think one thing you could say is we're always moving forward. We're always putting out content, and we're the one constant. You know, we're one of the few constants in this field that are always putting stuff out and getting information out for you all. And that brings me to you. Thank you all so much for being here to enjoy our podcast and to listen to and watch our videos and read our website and all of this stuff. Thank you all so much. I also want to thank Caleb Hanks, who does the opening and closed music. Otherwise, we will be back next week with another exciting episode. Oh, by the way, next week is the MUFON Symposium. So we'll have a show next week, but probably not the week after because we're going to be busy at the MUFON